The Destiny of Nathalie X and Other Stories by William Boyd. This book consists of an author's note and 11 short stories and is 177 pages long. The following material appears on the dust jacket of the book. A new collection of stories, his first book since The Blue Afternoon, moving, entertaining, as dexterously wrought as it is compelling, Michiko Kachutani, The New York Times, from the winner of the Los Angeles Times Book Award for Fiction. 11 stories about love and desire, ambition and despair, that take us back and forth through time from a contemporary Hollywood film shoot to World War I Vienna. In Cork, a bizarre tale of love in Lisbon, an Englishwoman and a Portuguese poet meet once a year through the 1930s and fulfill each other's fantastical desires. In Alpes Maritimes, a young Englishman must decide between the German woman he's seeing and her twin sister, to whom he is more strongly attracted. And in the title story, The Destiny of Nathalie X, a young award-winning foreign director in Los Angeles making a low-budget picture gradually discovers that he, the cast, the crew, and the entire troubled production are heading for unavoidable disaster. Artful, witty, moving, a confirmation of William Boyd's standing as a master storyteller. William Boyd was born in Ghana in 1952 and was educated at the universities of Nice, Glasgow, and Oxford. He is the author of 1 collection of stories and 6 novels. He has been the winner of the Whitbread and the Somerset Maugham Awards, was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and won the James Tate Black Memorial Prize. He lives in London and France with his wife. Dedication. For Susan. William Boyd. The Destiny of Nathalie X and Other Stories. Author's Note. 4 of these stories have been published in Granta: The Destiny of Nathalie X, Cork, Transfigured Night, and Alpes Maritimes. Alpes Maritimes also made it into a second Penguin edition of my first volume of short stories, On the Yankee Station, 1981, but has never been collected between hardcovers, and I wanted to include it here, albeit in a slightly altered form. Loose Continuity was published in The New Yorker, The Dream Lover in London Magazine, Hotel des Voyageurs in the Daily Telegraph, and N is for N appeared in Hockney's Alphabet, Faber and Faber, 1993. William Boyd, London, 1997. The Destiny of Nathalie X. Man's Voice, over. I once heard a theory about this town, this place where we work and wrangle, where we swindle and swive. It was told to me by this writer I knew. He said, "It's only a dance, but then again it's the only dance." I'm not so sure he's right, but anyway, he's dead now. Fade in. Once upon a time, actually not so very long ago at all, come to think of it, in east-central West Africa, on one enervating May morning, Aurelien No sat on the stoop of his father's house, staring aimlessly at the road that led to Merkino Leto, state capital of the People's Republic of Kik. The sun's force seemed to press upon the dusty brown landscape with redundant intensity. Aurelien thought idly, there was no moisture left out there to evaporate, and it seemed, he searched for a word for a second or two, it seemed stupid that all that calorific energy should go to waste. He called for his little brother Marius to fetch him another beer, but no reply came from inside the house. He scratched his cheek. He thought he could taste metal in his mouth, that new filling. He shifted his weight on his cane chair and wondered vaguely why cane made that curious squeaking sound. Then his eye was caught by the sight of a small blue van that was making its way up the middle of the road with what seemed like undue celerity, tooting its horn at the occasional roadside pedestrian and browsing cow, not so much to scare them out of the way as to announce the importance of this errand it was on. To Aurelien's mild astonishment, The blue van turned abruptly into his father's driveway and stopped equally abruptly before the front door. As the laterite dust thrown up by the tires slowly dispersed, the postman emerged from the auburn cloud like a messenger from the gods, carrying before him a stiff envelope blazoned with an important-looking crest. Marius No. For sure, I remember that day when he won the prize. Personally, I was glad of the distraction. He had been murdering me all morning. Get this, get that, fetch me a beer. I just knew it had gone quiet for 10 minutes. When I came out onto the stoop, he was sitting there, looking even more vacant than normal, just staring at this paper in his hands. "Hey, Coco," I said to him. "Military service, Poor salaud. Wait till those bastard sergeants give you one up the cull." He said nothing, so I took the paper from his hands and read it. It was the 100,000 francs that had shocked him, struck him dumb. When Le Destiny de Nathalie X, metteur en scène Aurélien No, won the Prix d'Or at the Concours Général in Paris of l'École Supérieure des Études Cinématographiques, ESEC, the Keek Minister of Culture, Aurelien's brother-in-law, laid on a reception for 200 guests at the ministry. After a long speech, the minister called Aurélien onto the podium to shake his hand. Aurélien had gathered his small, tight dreadlocks into a loose sheaf on the top of his head, and the photographs from that special evening show him startled and blinking in a silvery wash of the flash bulbs, some natural flinch causing the fronds of his dreadlock sheaf to toss simultaneously in one direction, as if blown by a stiff breeze. The minister asked him what he planned to do with the prize money. "Good question," Aurélien said, and thought for 10 seconds or so before replying. "It's a condition of the prize that I put the money toward another film." "Here in Keek?" the minister said, smiling knowingly. "Of course." Delphine Drell. "It's impossible," I said when he called me. "Completely out of the question. Are you mad? What kind of film could you make in Keek?" He came to my apartment in Paris. He said he wanted me to be in his new film. I say I don't want to be an actress. Well, as soon as I started explaining, Aurélien saw I was making sense. That's what I like about Aurélien, by the way. He is responsive to the powers of reason. "Absolutely not," I said to Aurélien. "Never in my life." He said he had an idea, that only I could do it. I said, "Look what happened the last time. Do you think I'm crazy? I've only been out of the clinic 1 month. He just smiled at me. He said, "What do you think if we go to Hollywood?" Aurélien No turned out of the rental park at LAX and wondered which direction to take. Delphine Drell sat beside him, studying her face intently in the mirror of her compact, and moaning about the dehydrating effect of international air travel. In the back seat of the car sat Bertrand Holbisch, a photographer, an ex-boyfriend of Delphine, squashed in a cramped space left by the 2 large scratched and dented silver aluminum boxes that held the camera and the sound equipment. Aurélien turned left, drove 400 meters, and turned left again. He saw a sign directing him to the freeway and followed it until he reached a hotel. Dollar Wise Inn, he saw it was called as he pulled carefully into the forecourt. The hotel was a 6-story rectangle. The orange plastic cladding on the balconies had been bleached salmon pink by the sun. "Here we are," Aurélien said. "This is perfect." "Where's Hollywood?" Bertrand Holbisch asked. "Can't be far away," Aurélien said. Bertrand Holbisch. Immediately when he asked me, I said to Aurélien that I didn't know much about sound. He said, "You switch it on, you point the volume. No, you check the volume and you point the, what's the word? What? Ah, yes, boom." I said, "You pay my ticket, you buy me drugs?" He said, "Of course, only don't touch Delphine." Yeah, that's Aurélien for you. One crazy guy. Delphine Drell. Did I tell you that he is a very attractive man, Aurelienne? Yes, he's a real African, you know. Strong face, strong African face. And his lips, are like they're carved. He's tall, slim. He has this hair, it's like that tennis player, Noah, like little braids hanging down over his forehead. Sometimes he puts beads on the end of them. I don't like it so much. I want him to shave his head, completely. He speaks real good English, Aurelienne. I never knew this about him. I asked him once how he pronounced his name, and he said something like, no. He says it is a common name in Keek, but everybody pronounces it differently. He doesn't mind. When Aurelienne went out the next day to scout for locations, he discovered that the area they were staying in was called Westchester. He drove through the featureless streets, unusually wide, he thought, for such an inactive neighborhood, the air charged and thunderous with landing jetliners, until he found a small cluster of shops beneath a revolving sign declaiming Brogan's Mini Mall. There was a deli, a pharmacy, a novelty store, a Korean grocery, and a pizzeria cum coffee shop that had most of the features he was looking for. Half a dozen tables on the sidewalk, a predominantly male staff, a license to sell alcoholic beverages. He went inside, ordered a cappuccino, and asked how long they stayed open in the evenings. Late, came the answer. For the first time since he had suggested coming to Los Angeles, Aurelienne sensed a small tremor of excitement. Perhaps it would be possible after all. He looked at the expressionless, tawny faces of the men behind the counter and the cheerful youths serving food and drink. He felt sure these gentlemen would allow him to film in their establishment, for a modest fee, of course. Michael Scott Gane. Have you ever seen La Destiny of Nathalie X? Extraordinary film, extraordinary. No, I tell you, I put it right up there with Un Chien Andalou, J.J. Todd's Last Walk, the Chelsea Girls, Downey's Chafed Elbows, that category of film. Surreal, bizarre. Let's not beat about the bush. Sometimes downright incomprehensible, but it gets to you, somehow, subcutaneously. You know, I spend more time thinking about certain scenes in Nathalie X than I do about Warner's annual slate. It's my business, what more can I say? You smoke? Do you have any non-violent objections if I do? Thank you, you're very gracious. I'm not kidding. You can't be too careful here. Nathalie X, okay. Well, it's very simple and outstandingly clever. A girl wakes up in her bed in her room. Aurelienne looked at his map. Delphine and Bertrand stood at his shoulder, sunglassed, fractious. We have to go from here to here. Aurelienne, when are we going to film? Tomorrow, maybe. First, we walk it through. Delphine let her shoulders slump. But we have the stock. Why don't we start? I don't know. I need an idea. Let's walk it through. He took Bertrand's elbow and guided him across the road to the other side. He made half a square with his thumbs and his forefingers, and framed Delphine in it as she lounged against the exit sign of the Dollar-Wise Inn. "Turn right," Aurelienne shouted across the road. "I'll tell you which way to go." Michael Scott Gane. A girl wakes up in her own bed in her own room somewhere in Paris. She gets out of bed and puts on her makeup very slowly, very deliberately. No score, just the noises she makes as she goes about her business. You know, paints her nails, mascara on eyelashes. She hums a bit. She starts to sing a song to herself. Snatches of a song in English. A Beatles song from the White Album. What's it called? Oh, yeah, Rocky Raccoon. This girl's French, right? And she's singing in English with a French accent, just quietly to herself. The song sounds totally different. Totally. Extraordinary effect. Body-wide goosebumps. This takes about 20-30 minutes. You are completely held. You do not notice the time passing. But something so totally, let's not beat about the bush, banal, can hold you that way. Extraordinary. We're talking mundanity here, absolute diurnal minutiae. I see, 250 movies a year in my business, not counting TV. I am replete with film, sated, but I'm held. No, mesmerized would be fair. Did I tell you the girl was naked? Turn left, Aurelienne called. Delphine obliged and walked past the mirror-glass facade of an office building. Stop! Aurelienne made a note on the map and turned to Bertrand. What could she do here, Bertrand? She needs to do something. I don't know. How should I know? Something makes her stop. Well, she could step in some dog shit. Aurelienne reflected for a while. He looked around him, at the cracked, parched concrete of the street, the dusty burnish on the few parked cars. There was a bleached, fumy quality to the light that day, a softened glare that hurt the eyes. The air reverberated as another jumbo hauled itself out of LAX. Not a bad idea, he said. Thanks, Bertrand. He called to Delphine. Okay, go up to the end of the road and turn left. Michael Scott Gane. I've written a lot about this movie, analyzed the hell out of it, the way it's shot, the way it manipulates mood, but it only struck me the other day how it works. Essentially. Basically. It's all in the title, you see. Le Destin. The Destiny of Nathalie X. Destiny. What does Destiny have in store for this girl, I should say, this astoundingly attractive girl? She gets up, and she puts on her makeup, she sings a song, she gets dressed. She leaves her apartment building and walks through the streets of Paris to a cafe. It's night time. She sits in this cafe and orders a beer. We're watching her, we're waiting. She drinks more beers. She seems to be getting drunk. And people come and go. We wait. We wonder. What is the destiny of Nathalie X? It's pronounced X in French, but not X. X, but, well. And then, but I don't want to spoil the movie for you. They started filming on their 6th day in Los Angeles. It was late afternoon, almost magic hour, and the orange sun basted the city in a thick, viscous light. Aurelienne shot the sequence of the walk in front of the mirror-glass building. The moving cloudscape on the mirror-glass curtain wall was disturbingly beautiful. Aurelienne had a moment's regret that he was filming in black and white. Delphine wore a short black skirt and a loose V-neck taupe cashmere sweater, no bra. On her feet she wore skin-colored kid loafers, so fine you could roll them into a ball. She had a fringed suede bag over her shoulder. Her long hair was dyed a light sandy blonde, and, after much debate, was down. Aurelienne set up the camera across the road for the first take. Bertrand stood beside him and pointed his microphone in the general direction of Delphine. Aurelienne switched on the camera, chalked scene 1 on the clapperboard, walked into the frame, clicked it, and said, "Voici Delphine." Nathalie X walked along the sidewalk. When she reached the middle of the mirror glass, she stopped. She took off one of her shoes and peeled the coin of chewing gum from its sole. She stuck the gum to the glass wall, refitted her shoe, and walked on. Michael Scott Gane. I have to say, as a gesture of contempt for Western materialism, the capitalist macro structure that we function in, that takes some beating. And it's not in the French version. Aurelienne has been 6 days in Los Angeles, and he comes up with something as succinct, as moodily epiphanic as that. That's what I call talent. Not raw talent, talent of the highest sophistication. Bertrand Holbisch. The way Delphine cut her hair, is the clue, I think. It's blonde, right? Long, and she has a fringe, okay? But not like anybody else's fringe. It's just too long. It hangs to her lower eyelash. To here, he gestures. to the middle of her nose. So she shakes her head all the time to clear her vision a little. She pulls it aside, like this, with one finger when she wants to see something a little better. You know, many, many people look at Delphine and find this very exciting, sexually, I mean. She's a pretty girl for sure, nice body, nice face. But I see these girls everywhere, especially in Los Angeles. It's something about this fringe business that makes her different. People look at her all the time. When we were waiting for Aurelienne, we, Delphine and me, used to play backgammon for hours. The fringe hanging there over her eyes, it drove me fucking crazy. I offered her $500 to cut it 1 centimeter, just 1 centimeter. She refused. She knew, Delphine. She knew. Aurelienne filmed the walk to the cafe first. It took 4 days, starting late afternoon, always approaching the cafe at dusk. He filmed Nathalie's levee in one sustained 12-hour burst. Delphine woke, made up, sang and dressed 8 times that day in a series of long takes, cuts only coming when the film ran out. The song changed. Delphine sang Bob Dylan's She Belongs to Me with the pronoun changed to he. This was Delphine's idea, and a good one, Aurelienne thought. The only problem was she kept forgetting. He's an artist. She don't look back, Delphine sang in her flat, breathy voice as she combed her hair. He never stumbles. She's got no place to fall. Every evening they would go to the pizzeria and eat. Aurelienne insisted that Delphine get drunk, not knee-walking drunk, but as far as woozy inebriation. Of course, the waiters came to know them, and conversation ensued. "What you guys doing here, anyway? Making a movie? Great. Another beer for the lady? No problemo." After a week's regular visiting, Aurelienne asked the owner, a small, nervy man called George Malinverno, if they could film at the pizzeria, outside on the terrace, for 1 night only. They agreed on a remuneration of $200. Michael Scott Gain. Have you ever heard of the Topeka Film Festival? That's Topeka, Kansas. No? Neither have I. So you can understand that I was kind of pissed when my editor assigned me to cover it. It ran a week. The theme was Kansas in the Western, 1970, 1980. Well, that's not my subject. My last book was on Murnau, for Christ's sake, but let's not get embroiled in office politics. The point is, I'm on my way to the airport, and I realize I've left my razor and shaving foam behind. I pull into this mini-mall where there's a pharmacy. I'm coming out of the shop, and I see there's a film crew setting up a shot of the pizzeria. Normally I see a film crew, and chronic catatonia sets in. But there's something about this one. The guy holding the boom mic looks like he's stoned. Even I can see that he keeps dropping into the shot. So I wander over. The camera is set up behind these plants, kind of poking through a gap like it's hidden or something. And then there's this black guy behind the camera with his great hair with beads on it. I see he's DP and clapper boy and director. He calls out into the darkness, and this sensational-looking girl walks into the pizzeria terrace thing. She sits down and orders a beer, and they just keep filming. After about 2 minutes, the sound man drops the boom, and they have to start over. I hear them talking. French. Couldn't believe it. I had this guy figured for some wannabe homeboy director out of South Central L.A., but they're talking French to each other. When was the last time a French crew shot a movie in this town? I introduced myself, and that's when he told me about Nathalie X and the Prix-d'Or. I bought them all some drinks, and he told me his story and gave me a video cassette of the movie. Fuck Topeka, I thought. I knew this was too good to miss. French underground movies shooting next door to LAX? Are you kidding me? They were all staying in some flea-bag motel under the flight path, for God's sake. I called my editor and threatened to take the feature to American Film. He reassigned me. The night shooting at the pizzeria did not go well. Bertrand proved incapable of holding the boom aloft for more than 2 minutes, and this was one sequence where Aurelienne knew he needed sound. He spent a half an hour taping a mic under Delphine's table and snaking the wires around behind the potted plants. Then this man who said he was a film critic turned up and offered to buy them a drink. When Aurelienne was talking to him, Delphine drank 3 margaritas and a Negroni. When they tried to restart, her reflexes had slowed to such an extent that when she remembered she had to throw the glass of beer, the waiter had turned away and she missed completely. Aurelienne wrapped it up for the night. Holbish wandered off and Aurelienne drove Delphine back to the hotel. She was sick in the parking lot and started to cry, and that's when Aurelienne thought about the gun. Kaiser Provost. I rarely read film E. It's way too pretentious. Ditto that creep Michael Scott Gane, any guy with 3 names, and I get irrationally angry. What's wrong with plain old Michael Gane? Are there so many Michael Gaines out there that he has to distinguish himself? Oh, you mean Michael Scott Gane? I got you now. I'd like a teacher straight up with 3 ice cubes. 3, thank you. Anyway, for some reason I bought it that week. It was the issue with that great shot of Jessica, no, Lanier, on the cover. And I read the piece about this French director, Aurelienne No, and this remake, Seeing Through Nathalie, he was shooting in town. Michael Scott Gane, is going on like this guy sitting there holding God's hand, and I read about the pre-door in this Nathalie X film, and I think, has Aurelienne got representation? This is Hague. This is not teachers. Michael Scott Gane. I just knew when this young guy, Kaiser Prevost, calls me up, things would change. Hi, Michael, he says. Kaiser Prevost here. I don't know jack shit about any Kaiser Prevost, but I do know I hate it when someone uses my Christian name from the get-go. What's wrong with Mr. Gane? Also, his tone just oozes the assumption that I'm going to know who he is. I mean, I am a film critic of some reputation, if I may be immodest for a moment, and these young guys in the agencies, there's a problem of perspectives. That's what it comes down to. That's what bedevils us. I have a theory about this town. There is no overview. Nobody steps back. No one stands on the mountain looking down on the valley. Imagine an army composed entirely of officers. Let me put it another way. Imagine an army where everyone thinks they're an officer. That's Hollywood. That's the film business. No one wants to accept the hierarchy. No one will admit they are a foot soldier. And I'm sorry, a young agent in a boutique agency is just a G.I. Joe to me. Still, he was a persuasive fellow, and he had some astute and flattering things to say about the article. I told him where Aurelienne was staying. Aurelienne No met Kaiser Prevost for breakfast in the coffee shop of the Dollarwise. Prevost looked around him as if he had just emerged from some prolonged comatose sleep. You know, I've lived in this town for all my life, and I don't think I've ever even driven through here. As for shooting a movie, it's a first. Well, it was right for me. Oh, no, I appreciate that. I think it's fresh, original. Gane certainly thinks a lot of you. Who? Prevost showed him the article in Film E. Aurelienne flicked through it. He has written a lot. Have you got a rough assembly of the new movie? Anything I could see? No. Any dailies, maybe? You call them rushes. There are no dailies on this film, and none of us see anything until it is finished. Ah, the ultimate auteur, huh? That is impressive. More than that, it's cool. Aurelienne chuckled. No, it's a question of, what do you say, faute de mieux. I couldn't have put it better myself. Look, Aurelienne, I'd like you to meet somebody, a friend of mine at a studio. Can I fix that up? I think it will be mutually beneficial. Sure, if you like. Kaiser Prevost. I have a theory about this town, this place, about the way it works. It operates best when people go beyond the bounds of acceptable behavior. You reach a position, a course of action suggests itself, and you say, this makes me morally uncomfortable, or this will constitute a betrayal of friendship. In any other walk of life, you withdraw, you rethink. But my theory instead goes like this. Make it your working maxim. When you find yourself in a position of normative doubt, then that is the sign to commit. My variation on this theory is that the really successful people go one step further. They find themselves in this moral gray area. They move right on into the black. Look at Vincent Bandine. I knew he was doing the right thing with Aurélien No, because I had determined not to tell my boss. Sheldon started Art Focus after 10 years at ICM. It was going well, but it's clear that the foundations are giving. 2 months ago, we lost Larry Swiftshaw. Last Saturday, I get a call from Sheldon. Donata Vale has walked to CAA, his own Donata. He was weeping and was looking for consolation, which I hope I provided. Under these circumstances, it seemed to me at best morally dubious that I should go behind his back and try to set up a deal for Aurélien at Alcazar. I was confident it was the only route to take. The gun idea persisted. It nagged at Aurélien. He talked about it with Bertrand, who thought it was an amusing notion. A gun? Why not? Pam, 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 pam. Could you get me one? A handgun? Aurélien asked. Maybe one of those guys you know. A prop gun or a real one? Oh, I think it should be real. Don't tell Delphine, though. The next day, Bertrand showed Aurélien a small, scarred automatic. It cost $500. Aurélien did not question him about its provenance. He reshot the end of Nathalie's levee. Nathalie, dressed, is about to leave her room. Her hand is on the doorknob. She pauses, turns, and goes to a dresser, from whose top drawer she removes the gun. She checks the clip and places it in her fringed suede shoulder bag. She leaves. He and Delphine had a prolonged debate about whether they should reshoot the entire walk to the restaurant. Delphine thought it was pointless. How, she argued, would the audience know if the gun was in her shoulder bag or not? But you would know, Aurélien countered, and everything might change. Delphine maintained that she would walk the same way whether she had a gun in her bag or not. Also, they had been in Los Angeles for 3 weeks and she was growing bored. Le Destin had been filmed in 5 days. A compromise was agreed. They would only reshoot the pizzeria sequence. Aurélien went off to negotiate another night's filming. Bob Berger. I hate to admit it, but I was grateful to Kaiser Prevost when he brought the Nathalie X project to me. As I told him, I'd admired Aurélien No's work for some years and was excited and honored at the possibility of setting up his first English-language film. More to the point, the last 2 films I execed at Alcazar had done me no favors. Disintegrator had only grossed 13 before they stopped tracking, and Sophomore Night 2 had gone straight to video. I like the idea of doing something with more art quality and with a European kind of angle. I asked Kaiser to get a script to me soonest, and I raised the project at our Monday morning staff meeting. I said I thought it would be a perfect vehicle for Lanier Cross. Boy, did that make Vincent sit up. Dirty old toad. He's my uncle. Kaiser Prevost. I'll tell you one fact about Vincent Bandine. He has the cleanest teeth and the healthiest gums in Hollywood. Every morning a dental nurse comes to his house and flosses and cleans his teeth for him. Every morning, 365 days a year. That's what I call class. Have you any idea how much that must cost? Kaiser Prevost thought he detected an unsettled quality about Aurélien as he drove him to the meeting at Alcazar. Aurélien was frowning as he looked about him. The day was perfect, the air clear, the colors ideally bright. More than that, he was going to a deal meeting at a major-minor studio, or minor-major, depending on who you were talking to. Usually in these cases, the anticipation in the car would be heady, palpable. Aurélien just made clicking noises in his mouth and fiddled with the beads on the end of his dreadlocks. Prevost told him about Alcazar Films, their money base, their 10-picture slate, their deals or potential deals with Goldie, Franklin Dean, Joel, Demi, Carlos San Carlo, and Ital Film. The name seemed to make no impact. As they turned up Coldwater to go over into the valley, Prevost finally had to ask if everything was all right. There's a slight problem, Aurélien admitted. Delphine has left. That's too bad, Prevost said, trying to keep the excitement out of his voice. Gone back to France? I don't know. She's left with Bertrand. Bitch, man. We still have the whole last scene to reshoot. Listen, Aurelie, and relax. One thing you learn about working in this town, everything can be fixed. Everything. How can I finish without Delphine? Have you ever heard of Lanier Cross? Vincent Bandine. My nephew has two sterling qualities. He's dumb and he's eager to please. He's a good-looking kid, too, and that helps, no doubt about it. Sometimes he gets it right. Sometimes he has a sense for the popular mood. When he started talking about this Destiny of Nathalie film, I thought he was way out of his depth, until he mentioned the fact that Lanier Cross will be buck naked for the first 30 minutes. I said, get the French guy in, tie him up, get him together with Lanier. She'll go for that. She'll go for the French part. If the no fellow won't play, get the Englishman in. What's his name? Tim Pascal. He'll do it. He'll do anything I tell him. I have a theory about this town. There's too much respect for art. That's where we make all our mistakes. All of them. But if that's a given, then I'm prepared to work with it once in a while. Especially if it'll get me Lanier Cross naked. Michael Scott Gain. When I heard that Aurelie No was doing a deal with Vincent Bandine at Alcazar, I was both suicidal and oddly proud. If you'd asked me what was the worst home possible for a remake of Nathalie X, I'd have said Alcazar, straight off. But that's what heartens me about this burg, this place we fret and fight in. I have a theory about this town. They all talk about the business, the industry, how hard-nosed and bottom-line obsessed they are, but it's not true, or rather not the whole truth. Films of worth are made, and I respect the place for it. God, I even respected Vincent Bandine for it, and I never thought those words would ever issue from my mouth. We shouldn't say, look at all the crap that gets churned out. Instead, we should be amazed at the good films that do emerge from time to time. There is a heart here, and it's still beating, even though the pulse is kind of thready. Aurelian was impressed with the brutal economy of Bob Burge's office. A black ebony desk sat in the middle of a charcoal-grey carpet. Two large black leather sofas were separated by a thick sheet of glass resting on 3 sharp cones. On one wall were 2 black and white photographs of lily trumpets, and on another was an African mask. There was no evidence of work or the tools of work, apart from the long, flattened telephone on his desk. Burge himself was wearing crushed banana linen. He was in his mid-20s, tall and deeply tanned. Burge shook Aurelien's hand warmly, his left hand gripping Aurelien's forearm firmly, as if he were a drowning man about to be hauled from a watery grave. He drew Aurelien to one of the leather sofas and sat him upon it. Prevost slid down beside him. A great variety of drinks were offered, though Aurelien's choice of beer caused some consternation. Burge's assistant was dispatched in search of one. Prevost and Burge's decaf espressos arrived promptly. Prevost gestured at the mask. "Home sweet home, eh, Aurelien?" "Excuse me." "Well, I love African art," Burgess said. "What part of Africa are you from?" "Keek." "Right," Burgess said. There was a short silence. "Oh, congratulations," Burgess said. "Excuse me?" "On the prize, Prix d'Or, well deserved. Kaiser, have you got a print of Nathalie X?" "We're shipping it over from Paris. It'll be here tomorrow." "It will?" Aurelien said, a little bemused. "Everything can be fixed, Aurelien. I want Lanier to see it, and Vincent. Bob, I don't know if it's really Vincent's scene. He has to see it. Okay, after we sign Lanier. I think that will be wise, Bob. I want to see it again, I must say. Extraordinary piece." "You've seen it?" Aurelien said. "Yeah, at Cannes, I think, or possibly Berlin. We got a script yet, Kaiser?" "There is no script. Extant. But we've got to get a synopsis, a treatment at least. Michael want to see something on paper. I never let Lanier go otherwise." "Shit. We need a goddamn writer then," Prevost said. "David," Burgess said into the speakerphone, "we need a writer. Get Matt Friedrich." He turned to Aurelien. "You'll like him. One of the old school. What?" He listened to the phone again and sighed. "Aurelien, we're having some trouble tracking down your beer. What do you say to a Dr. Pepper?" Bob Berger. I have a theory about this town, this place. You have people in powerful executive positions who are, to put it kindly, very ordinary-looking types. I'm not talking about intellect, I'm talking about looks. The problem is these ordinary-looking people control the lives of individuals with sensational genetic advantages. That's an unbelievably volatile mix, I can tell you. And it cuts both ways. It can be very uncomfortable. It's fine for me, I'm a handsome guy, I'm in good shape. But for most of my colleagues, well, it's the source of many of our problems. That's why I took up golf. Lanier Cross. Tolstoy said, life is a tartine de merde that we are obliged to consume daily. This is for me, Aurelian said, looking at the house, its landscaped, multi-level sprawl, the wide moor of its vast garage. You can't stay down by the airport, Prevost said. Not any more. You can shoot in Westchester, but you can't live there. A young woman emerged from the front door. She had short chestnut hair, a wide white smile, and was wearing a spandex leotard and heavy climbing boots. This is Nancy, your assistant. Hi. Good to meet you, Aurelian. Did I say that right? Aurelian. Aurelian? It's not important. The office is in the back of the tennis court. It's in good shape. Look, I gotta fly, Aurelian. You're meeting Lanier Cross, 7:30 a.m. at the Hamburger Heaven on the shore. Nancy'll fix everything up. To his surprise, Kaiser Prevost then embraced him. When they broke apart, Aurelian thought he saw tears in his eyes. We'll fucking show them, man. We'll fucking show them. Onward and upward. Way to fucking go. Any news of Delphine? Who? Oh, no, nothing yet. Any problems? Call me, Aurelian. 24 hours a day. Matt Friedrich. But Destiny of Nathalie X was not as boring as I'd expected, but then I was expecting terminal boredom. I was bored, sure, but it was nice to see Paris again. That's the great thing they've got going for them. French films, they carry this wonderful cargo of nostalgic francophilia for all non-French audiences. Pretty girl, too, easy on the eye. I never thought I could happily watch a girl drink herself drunk in a French cafe, but I did. It was not a wasted hour and a half. Sure freaked out Prevost and Berger, though. Extraordinary, Prevost said, clearly moved. Extraordinary piece. Berger mused a while before announcing, that girl is a fox. Michael Scott Gane thinks it's a masterpiece, I said. They agreed vehemently. It's one of my tricks. When you don't know what to say, when you hated it, you're really stuck and anything qualified won't pass muster, use someone else's praise. It's one of my tricks. When you don't know what to say, when you hated it, you're really stuck and anything qualified won't pass muster, use someone else's praise. Make it up if you have to. It's infallible, I promise. I asked them how long they wanted the synopsis to be. Sentence length or half a page. Berger said it had to be over 40 pages, closely spaced, so people would be reluctant to read it. We already have coverage, he said, but we need a document. Make it as surreal and weird as you like, Prevost said, handing me the video cassette. That's the whole point. We walked out into the Alcazar lot and went in search of our automobiles. When's he meeting Lanier? Berger said. Tomorrow morning. She'll love him, Bob, Prevost said. It's a done deal. Berger gestured at the heavens. Bountiful Jehovah, he said, get me Lanier. I looked at these two guys, young enough to be my sons, as they crouched into their sleek, haunchy cars under a tallow moon, fantasizing loudly, belligerently about this notional film, the deals, the stars, and I felt enormous pity for them. I have a theory about this town. Our trouble is we are at once the most confident and the most insecure people in the world. We seem bulging with self-assurance, full of loud-voiced swagger, but in reality we're terrified, or we hate ourselves, or we're all taking happy pills of some order or another, or seeing shrinks, or getting counselled by fakirs and shamans, or fleeced by a whole gallimaufry of frauds and mountebanks. This is the Faustian Pact. Or should I say, this is the Faust deal. You have to make in order to live and work here. You get it all, sure, but you get royally fucked up in the process. That's the price you pay. It's in the contract. Aurelian No was directed to Lanier Cross's table in the dark rear angles of a hamburger heaven. Another man and a woman were sitting with her. Aurelian shook her thin hand. She was beautiful, he saw, but so small, a child woman, the musculature of a 12-year-old with the sexual features of an adult. She introduced the others, an amiable, grinning, broad-shouldered youngster, and a lean, crop-haired woman in her 40s with a fierce, strong face. "This is my husband," she said, "Kit Vermeer, and this is Naomi Tashurian. She's a writer we work with." "We love your work," Kit said. "Beautiful film," echoed Lanier. "You've seen it?" Aurelian said. "We saw it 2 hours ago," Lanier said. Aurelian looked at his watch. Nancy had made sure he was punctual. 7:30 a.m. "I called Berger. Said I just had to see it before we met." "We tend to sleep in the day," Kit said, "like bats." "Like lemurs," Lanier said. "I don't like bats." "Like lemurs." "It's a beautiful film," Lanier said. "That's why we wanted to meet with you." She reached up and unfastened a large plastic bulldog clip on the top of her head and uncoiled a great dark glossy hank of hair a yard long. She pulled and tightened it, screwing it up, winding it around her right hand, pining it back on the top of her head before she refastened it in position with the clip. Everyone remained silent during this operation. "That's why we wanted you to meet Naomi." "This is a remake, right?" Naomi said. "Yes, I think so." "Excellent," Lanier said. "I know Kit wants to put something to you. Kit?" Kit leaned across the table. "I want to play the waiter," he said. Aurelian thought before answering. "The waiter is only in the film for about 2 minutes, right at the end." "Which is why we thought you should meet Naomi." "The way I see it," Naomi said, "is that Nathalie has been in a relationship with a waiter. That's why she goes to the restaurant. And we could see in flashback, their relationship." "I think it could be extraordinary, Aurelian," Lanier said. "And I know that, because of our situation, I and Lanier, our marital situation," Kit added. "We could bring something extraordinary to that relationship, and beautiful." Lanier and Kit kissed each other, briefly but with some passion, before resuming the argument in favor of the flashback. Aurelian ordered some steak and French fries as they fleshed out the relationship between Nathalie X and her waiter-lover. "And Naomi would write this?" Aurelian asked. "Yes," Lanier said. "I'm not ready to work with another writer just yet." "I think Bob Berger has another writer, Matt Friedrich." "What's he done?" Kit said. "We'll have to let Matt go, Aurelian," Lanier said. "You shouldn't drink beer this early in the morning." "Why not?" "I'm an alcoholic," Kit said. "It's the thin edge of the wedge, believe me." "Could you guys leave me alone with Aurelian?" Lanier said. They left. Lanier Cross. "I have a theory about this town. The money doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter. Everybody thinks it's about the money, but they're wrong. They think it's only because of the money that people put up with the god-awful shit that's dumped on them. That there can be only one possible reason why people are prepared to be so desperately unhappy. Money. Not so. Consider this. Everybody who matters in this town has more than enough money. They don't need any more money. And I'm not talking about the studio heads, the top directors, the big stars, the people with obscene amounts. There are thousands of people in this town, possibly tens of thousands, who are involved in movies, who have more money than is reasonably acceptable. So it's not about money. Can't be. It's about something else. It's about being at the center of the world. She loved you, Kaiser Prevost said. She's all over you like a rash. Any news of Delphine? Who? Ah, no. What did you say to her, to Lania? Bob called. She'll do it for nothing. Well, half her normal fee. Sensational idea about Kit Vermeer. Excellent. Why didn't I think of that? Maybe that's what swung it. No, it was her idea. How are we going to finish the film without Delphine? Aurelian, please, forget Delphine Drell. We have Lania Cross. We fired Friedrich. We got Tashurian writing the flashback. We're in business, my son. In business. Naomi Tashurian. I have a theory about this town, this place. Don't be a woman. Aurelian sat in the cutting room with Barker Lear, an editor, as they ran what existed of Seeing Through Nathalie on the Moviola. Barker, a heavy man with a grizzled ginger goatee, watched Delphine sit down at the pizzeria and order a beer. She drank it down, ordered another. Then the sound boom, which had been bobbing erratically in and out of frame for the last few minutes, fell fully into view, and the screen went black. Barker turned and looked at Aurelian, who was frowning and tapping his teeth with the end of a pencil. "That's some film," Barker said. "Who's the girl? She's extraordinary." "Delphine Drell." "She's a big star in France?" "No. Sort of hypnotic effect she has." He shrugged. "Shame about the boom." "Oh, I don't worry about that sort of thing," Aurelian said. "It adds to the verisimilitude." "I don't follow." "You're meant to know it's a film. That's why the end works so well." "So what happens in the end? You've still got to shoot it, right?" "Yes. I don't know what happens. Neither does Delphine." "You don't say." "She gets drunk, you see. We watch her getting drunk. We don't cut away. We don't know what she might do. That's what makes it so exciting. That's the Destiny of Nathalie X." "I see. So, what happened at the end of the first film?" "She goes to the cafe. She drinks 6 or 7 beers very quickly, and I can see she's quite drunk. She orders another drink, and when the waiter brings it, she throws it in his face." "You don't say. Then what?" "They have a fight. Delphine and the waiter. They really hit each other. It's fantastic. Delphine, she's had this training, self-defense. She knees this guy in the cooey. Boff! Fascinating. He falls over. She collapses, crying. She turns to me, swears at me, runs off into the night. The end. It's amazing." Barker rubbed his beard, thinking. He glanced at Aurelian covertly. "Going to do the same thing here?" No. It's got to be different for the USA, for Hollywood. That's why I gave her the gun." "Is it a real gun?" "Oh, yes. Otherwise, what would be the point?" Barker Lear. "I definitely had him for a wacko at first. But after I spent an afternoon with him, talking to him, it seemed to me he really knew what he was doing. He was a real calm guy, Aurelian. He had his own vision, didn't worry about other people, what other people might think of him. And it was the easiest editing job I ever did. Long takes, lots of handheld stuff. The walk had a few reverses, a few mid-shots, dolly shots, and the film was kind of exciting, I have to admit. I was really quite disappointed that he still hadn't shot the end. This girl, Delphine, with this crazy blonde fringe over her eyes, there was definitely something wild about her. I mean, who knows, once she got loaded, what she might have done. Maybe Aurelian wasn't a wacko. She definitely was. You know, I have a theory about this town, this place. I've been working here for 25 years, and I've seen them all. In this town, you have very, very clever people and very, very wacko people. And the problem is, and that's what makes this place different, our special problem is the very clever people have to work with the very wacko people. They have to. They can't help it. It's the nature of the job. That doesn't happen other places for one simple reason. Clever and wacko don't mix. Aurelienne stood by the pool with Nancy, enjoying the subdued play of morning light on the water. Today Nancy's hair was white blonde, and she wore a tutu over her leotard and cowboy boots with spurs. She handed him a pair of car keys and an envelope with $1,000 in it. "That's the new rental car. Celica, okay? And there's your per diem. And you've got dinner with Lanny across at 6:30. 6:30 p.m.? Ah, yeah. She can make it 6 o'clock if you prefer. She asked me to tell you it'll be vegetarian. What are all those men doing? Is it some kind of military exercise? Those are the gardeners. Shall I make them go away? No, it's fine. Oh, and Tim Pascal called. Who's he? He's an English film director. He has several projects in development at Alcazar. He wanted to know if you wanted to lunch or drink or whatever." The doorbell rang. Aurelienne strode across the several levels of his cool white living room to answer it. And as he did so, the bell rang twice again. It was Delphine. Kaiser Prevost. "I have a theory about this town. It doesn't represent the fulfillment of the American dream. It represents the fulfillment of an American reality. It rewards relentless persistence, massive stamina, ruthlessness, and the ability to live with grotesque failure. Look at me. I'm a smallish guy, 138 pounds, with pretty severe myopia, and near-average academic qualifications. But I have a personable manner and an excellent memory and a good head of hair. I will work hard, and I will take hard decisions, and I have developed the thickest of thick skins. With these attributes in this town, nothing can stop me. All those like me. We are legion. We know what they call us, but we don't care. We don't need contacts. We don't need influence. We don't need talent. We don't need cosmetic surgery. That's why I love this place. It allows us to thrive. That's why when I heard Aurelienne had never showed for dinner with Lanny across, I didn't panic. People like me take that kind of awful crisis in their stride." Aurelienne turned over and gently kissed Delphine's right breast. She stubbed out her cigarette and hunched into him. "This house is incredible, Aurelienne. I like it here." "Where's Hulbish?" "You promised me you wouldn't mention him again. I'm sorry, Aurelienne. I don't know what made me do it." "No, I'm just curious." "He's gone to Seattle." "Well, we can manage without him. Are you ready?" "Of course. It's the least I can do. What about the pizzeria?" "I was given $1,000 cash today. I knew it would come in useful." Matt Friedrich. I have to admit I was hoping for the Seeing Through Nathalie rewrite. When Bob Berger fired me and said that Naomi Tashurian was the new writer, it hurt for a while. Always does, no matter how successful you are. But in my case I was due a break, and I thought Nathalie was it. I've missed out on my last 3 guild arbitrations, and a Lanier Cross film would have helped, however half-baked, however art-house. Burgess said they would honor the fee for the synopsis I did. Obfuscation takes on new meaning, but I guess the check is still in the post. But I do not repine, as a great English novelist once said. I just get on with the job. I have a theory about this town, this Spielraum where we dream and dawdle. One of our problems, perhaps it's the problem, is that here ego always outstrips ability. Always. That applies to everyone. Writers, directors, actors. It's our disease, our mark of Cain. When you have success here, you think you can do anything. That's the great error. The success diet here is too rich for our digestive systems. It poisons us, addles the brain. It makes us blind. We lose our self-knowledge. My advice to all those who make it is this. Take the job you would have done if the film had been a flop. Don't go for the big one. Don't let those horizons recede. Do the commercial, the TV pilot, the documentary, the 3-week rewrite, the character role, or whatever it was you had lined up first. Do that job, and then maybe you can reach for the forbidden fruit, but at least you'll have your feet on the ground. Kaiser? Bob? He's not at the house, Kaiser. Shit. He's gone to phone her. He's got to apologize. No, he's got to lie. She called Vincent. Fuck. The bitch. That's how bad she wants to do it. I think it's a good sign. Where is that African bastard? I'll kill him. Nancy says the French babe showed. Oh, no. No, fucking no. It gets worse, Kaiser. Vincent told me to call Tim Pascal. Who the fuck's he? Some English director. Lanier wants to meet with him. Who's his agent? Sheldon. Hello? Kaiser? George Malinverno. I got a theory about this town, this place. Everybody likes pizza, even the French. We got to know them real well, I guess. They came back every night, the French. The tall black guy, the ratty one, and the blonde girl. Real pretty girl. Every night they come. Every night they eat pizza. Every night she ties one on. Everybody likes pizza. Everybody. Too bad I didn't think of it first, huh? They film one night. And the girl, she's steaming. Then, I don't know, something goes wrong and we don't see them for a while. Then he comes back. Just the black guy, Aurelien, and the girl. He says, can they film? One night, $1,000. I say, for sure. So he sets up the sound and he sets up the camera behind the bushes. You know, it's not a disturbance exactly. I never see anybody make a film like this before. $1,000. It's very generous. So the girl, she walks up, she takes a seat, she orders a beer, keeps on drinking. Soon she's pretty stewed. Aurelien sits behind the bushes, just keeps filming. Some guy tries to pick her up, puts his hand on the table, leans over. She takes a book of matches, like that one, and does something to the back of his hand with the corner. I couldn't see what she did, but the guy gasps with pain, shudders like this, just backs off. Then we get a big party and birthday party. They'd already booked 14 people. She sits there drinking and smoking. Aurelien's filming. Then we bring the cake out of the kitchen, candles all lit. Whenever there's a birthday, we get Chico to sing. Chico, the little waiter, tubby guy, wanted to be an opera singer. Got a fine, strong voice. He's singing Happy Birthday to You. He's got a kind of drawn-out, elaborate way of singing it. Top of his voice, molto vibrato, you know? Next thing I know, the girl's on her feet with a fucking gun in her hand, screaming in French. Nobody can hear because Chico's singing his balls off. I tear out from behind the bar, but I'm too late. Pow! First shot blows the cake away. Bam! Second one gets Chico in the thigh. Flesh wound, thank God. I charge her to the ground. Roberto jumps on top. We wrestle the gun away. She puts up quite a fight for a little thing. Did something to my shoulder, too. She twisted it in some way. Never been the same since. Aurelien got the whole thing on film. I hear it looks great. Aurelien sat outside the Alcazar screening room with Kaiser Prevost and Bob Berger. Berger combed and recombed his hair. He kept smelling his comb, smelling his fingertips. He asked Prevost to smell his hair. Prevost said it smelled of shampoo. Prevost went to the lavatory for the 4th time. Relax, Aurelien said to them both. I'm really pleased with the film. I couldn't be more pleased. Berger groaned. Don't say that. Don't say that. If he likes it, Kaiser said, we're in business. Lanier will like it for sure, and Aurelien will apologize. Won't you, Aurelien? Of course you will. No problem. Lanier loved him. Lanier loved you, didn't she, Aurelien? Why are we worried about Lanier? Aurelien said. Delphine came back. We finished the film. Jesus Christ, said Bob Berger. Don't worry, Bob, Kaiser said. Everything can be fixed. Vincent Bandine emerged from the screening room. Aurelien stood up. What do you think? Vincent Bandine. I believe in candor. I have a theory about this town, this place. We don't put enough stock in candor. I'm into candor in a big way. So I take Aurelien aside gently and I say, Aurelien, or whatever your name is, I think your film is goat shit. I think it's a disgusting, boring piece of grade-A manure. I wouldn't give the sweat of my balls for your goat shit film. That's what I said, verbatim. And I have to give it to the kid. He just stood there and he looked at me, sort of a slight smile on his face. Usually when I'm this candid, they're in deep shock, or weeping, or vomiting by now. And he looks at me and he says, "I can't blame you for thinking like this. You're not a man of culture, so I can't blame you for thinking like this." And he walks. He walks out jauntily. I should have had his fucking legs broken. I've got the biggest collection of Vuillard paintings on the west coast of America. I should have had his fucking legs broken. We had to pay the waiter 50 grand not to press charges, keep the Alcazar name out of things. The girl went to a clinic for 3 weeks to dry out. Aurelia, no. Not a man of culture, eh? Kit Vermeer. Lania took it badly. I don't think that. Do you mind? Thank you. Bats and lemurs, man, wow, they didn't get a look in. Bats and lemurs. Story of my life. Weltanschauung, that's what I'm up for. No, Weltschmerz, that's my bag. Bats and lemurs. Why not owls and armadillos? No, I'm not looking at you, sir, or talking to you. Forsooth, fucking nerd, wank in a bath, that's what an English friend of mine calls them. What a wank in a bath. Owls and armadillos. Matt Friedrich. Aurelian came to see me before he left, which was gracious of him, I thought, especially for a film director, and he told me what had happened. I commiserated and told him other sorry stories about this town, this place. But he needed no consoling. "I enjoyed my visit," he said. "No, I did, and I made the film. It was a curious but interesting experience." "It's just a dance," I think I remember saying to him. "It's just a dance we have to do." He laughed. He found that funny. End roller. Bob Berger is working from home, where he is writing several screenplays. Delphine Drell plays the character Susie de la Tour in NBC's Till Darkness Falls. Kaiser Prevost works for the investment bank Harbinger Cohen in New York City. Marius No is in his first year at l'École supérieure des études cinématographiques. Bertrand Holbish manages the Seattle band Morbid Anatomy. Naomi Tashurian has written her first novel, credits not contractual. Michael Scott Gain is chief executive critic and on the editorial board of Film E. Kit Vermeer is a practicing Sikh and wishes to be known as Khalsa Hari Atma. Lania Cross is scheduled to star in Lucy Wang's film Charles Baudelaire's Les Fleurs du Mal. George Malinverno has opened a third pizzeria in Pacific Palisades. Vincent Bandine has announced Alcazar Films' 18-picture slate for the coming year. Barker Lear lives in San Luis Obispo. Matt Friedrich has taken his own life. Nathalie X, aux États-Unis, has been nominated for an Academy Award in the Best Foreign Film category. Aurelia No is not returning your calls. Transfigured Night. From my 10th or 11th year, I remember the following incident. Box on the ear. Looking for a gymnasium. Aryan origin. Gymnasium. Love for Eric. Fight. Relation to Paul, to Gretel, to Rudy. Good memories. Wolfram. I attempt to win him over and entice him away from my brother. Being in love. Paul, a mischief maker. Innocent expression. Lewdness. Latin exercises for papa. Thoughts of suicide. The private papers of Ludwig Wittgenstein. Salzmord. In this city, and at this time, you should understand that suicide was a completely acceptable option, an entirely understandable, rational course of action to take. And I speak as one who knows its temptations intimately. 3 of my elder brothers took their own lives, Hans, Rudy, and Kurt. That left Paul, me, and my 3 older sisters. My sisters, I am sure, were immune to suicide's powerful contagion. I cannot speak for Paul. As for myself, I can only say that its clean resolution of all my problems, intellectual and emotional, was always most appealing. That open door to oblivion always beckoned to me, and, odd though it may seem, suicide, the idea of suicide, lies at the very foundation of all my work in ethics and logic. The benefactor. I came down from the Hochreith, our house in the country, to Vienna, especially to meet Herr Ficker. The big white villa in the parks of Neufeldegg was closed up for the summer. I had one of the gardeners prepare my room and make up a bed, and his wife laid the table on the terrace and helped me cook dinner. We were to have Natura schnitzel with cock salad with a cold bottle of Zobinger. Simple, honest food. I hoped Ficker would notice. I shaved and dressed and went out onto the terrace to wait for him to arrive. I was wearing a lemon-yellow, soft-collared shirt with no tie and a light tweed jacket that I had bought years before in Manchester. Its fraying cuffs had been repaired in the English way with a dun green leather. My hair was clean and still damp. My face was cool, scraped smooth. I drank a glass of sherbet water as I waited for Ficker. The evening light was milky and diffused, as if hung with dust. I could hear the faint noise of motors and carriages on the roads of Neufeldegg, and in the gathering dusk I could make out the figure of the gardener moving about in the alley of bleached limes. A fleeting but palpable peace descended on me, and I thought for some minutes of David and our holidays together in Iceland and Norway. I missed him. Ficker was an earnest young man, taller than me, mind you, I am not particularly tall, with fine thinning hair brushed back off his brow. He wore spectacles with crooked wire frames, as if he had accidentally sat upon them and had hastily straightened them out himself. He was neatly and soberly dressed, wore no hat, and was clean-shaven. His lopsided spectacles suggested a spirit of frivolity and facetiousness that, I soon found out, was entirely inaccurate. I had already explained to him by letter about my father's death, my legacy, and how I wished to dispose of a proportion of it. He had agreed to my conditions and promised to respect my demand for total anonymity. We talked in business-like fashion about the details, but I could sense, as he expressed his gratitude, strong currents of astonishment and curiosity. Eventually he had to ask, "But why me? Why my magazine in particular?" I shrugged. It seemed to be exemplary of its sort. I like its attitude, its seriousness. And besides, your writers seem the most needy. Yes, that's true. He was none the wiser. It's a family trait. My father was a great benefactor. To musicians mainly. We just like to do it. Ficker then produced a list of writers and painters he thought were the most deserving. I glanced through it. Very few of the names were familiar to me, and beside each one Ficker had written an appropriate sum of money. 2 names at the top of the list were to receive by far the largest amounts. "I know of Rilke, of course," I said, "and I'm delighted you chose him. But who's he?" I pointed to the other. "Why should he get so much? What does he do?" "He's a poet," Ficker said. "I think, well, no man on this list will benefit more from your generosity. To be completely frank, I think it might just save his life." Schubert. My brother Hans drowned himself in Chesapeake Bay. He was a musical prodigy who gave his first concert in Vienna at the age of 9. I never really knew him. My surviving brother Paul was also musically gifted, a brilliant pianist who was a pupil of Leschetizky and made his debut in 1913. I remember Paul saying to me once that of all musical tastes, the love of Schubert required the least explanation. When one thinks of the huge misery of his life and sees in his work no trace of it at all, sees the complete absence in his music of all bitterness. The bank. I'd arranged with Ficker that I would be in the Österreichische Nationalbank on Schwarze-Panier-Strasse at 3 o'clock. I was there early and sat down at a writing desk in a far corner. It was quiet and peaceful. The afternoon rush had yet to begin, and the occasional sound of heels on the marble floor as clients crossed from the entrance foyer to the rows of counters was soothing, like the background click of ivory dominoes or the ceramic kiss of billiard balls in the gaming room of my favourite cafe near the art schools. Ficker was on time and accompanied by our poet. Ficker caught my eye, and I gave a slight nod and then bent my head over the spectral papers on my desk. Ficker went to a teller's guichet to inquire about the banker's draft, leaving the poet standing momentarily alone in the middle of the marble floor, gazing around him like a peasant at the high dim vaults of the ceiling and the play of afternoon sunshine on the ornamental brasswork of the chandeliers. George, as I shall refer to him, was a young man, 27 years old, 2 years older than me, small and quite sturdily built, and, like many small men, seemed to have been provided with a head designed for a bigger body altogether. His head was crude and heavy-looking, its proportions exaggerated by his bristly, close-cropped hair. He was clean-shaven. He had a weak mouth, the upper lip overhung the bottom one slightly, and a thick triangular nose. He had low brows and slightly oriental-looking, almond-shaped eyes. He was what my mother would have called an ugly customer. He stood now, looking expressionlessly about him, swaying slightly as if buffeted by an invisible crowd. He appeared at once ill and strong, pale-faced, ugly, dark-eyed, but with something about the set of his shoulders, the way his feet were planted on the ground, that suggested reserves of strength. Indeed, the year before, Ficker had told me, he had almost died from an overdose of veronal that would have killed an ordinary man in an hour or two. Since his school days, it transpired, he had been a compulsive user of narcotic drugs and was also an immoderate drinker. At school he used chloroform to intoxicate himself. He was now a qualified dispensing chemist, a career he had taken up, so Ficker informed me, solely because it gave him access to more effective drugs. I found this single-mindedness oddly impressive. To train for 2 years at the University of Vienna as a pharmacist, to pass the necessary exams to qualify, testified to an uncommon dedication. Ficker had given me some of his poems to read. I could not understand them at all. Their images for me were strangely haunting and evocative, but finally entirely opaque. But I liked their tone. Their tone seemed to me to be quite remarkable. I watched him now discreetly, as Ficker completed the preliminary documentation and signalled him over to endorse the banker's draft. Ficker, I think this was a mistake, presented the cheque to him with a small flourish and shook him by the hand as if he had just won first prize in a lottery. I could sense that George knew very little of what was going on. I saw him turn the cheque over immediately, so as to hide the amount from his own eyes. He exchanged a few urgent words with Ficker, who smiled encouragingly and patted him on the arm. Ficker was very happy, almost gleeful, in his role as the philanthropist's go-between. He was vicariously enjoying what he imagined would be George's astonishment. But he was wrong. I knew at the instant George turned over the cheque and read the amount, 20,000 crowns. A thriving dispensive chemist would have had to work 6 or 7 years to earn a similar sum. I saw the cheque flutter and tremble in his fingers. I saw George blanch and swallow violently several times. He put the back of his hand to his lips and his shoulders heaved. He reached out to a pillar for support, bending over from the waist. His body convulsed in a spasm as he tried to control his writhing stomach. I knew then that he was an honest man, for he had the honest man's profound fear of extreme good fortune. Ficker snatched the cheque from his shaking fingers as George appeared to totter. He uttered a faint cry as warm bile and vomit shot from his mouth to splash and splatter on the cool marble of the National Bank's flagged floor. A good life, a good death. I got to know Ficker quite well over our various meetings about the division and disposal of my benefaction. Once in our discussions the subject of suicide came up, and he seemed genuinely surprised when I told him that scarcely a day went by when I did not think about it. But I explained to him that if I could not get along with life and the world, then to commit suicide would be the ultimate admission of failure. I pointed out that this notion was the very essence of ethics and morality. For if anything is not to be allowed, then surely that must be suicide. For if suicide is allowed, then anything is allowed. Sometimes I think that a good life should end in a death that one could welcome. Perhaps even it is only a good death that allows us to call a life good. George, I believe, has nearly died many times. For example, shortly before the Veronal incident, he almost eliminated himself by accident. George lived for a time in Innsbruck. One night, after a drinking bout in a small village near the city, he decided to walk home. At some stage on his journey back, overcome by tiredness, he decided to lie down in the snow and sleep. When he awoke in the morning, the world had been replaced by a turbid white void. For a moment he thought, but almost immediately he realized he had been covered in the night by a new fall of snow. In fact, it was about 40 centimeters deep. He heaved himself to his feet, brushed off his clothes, and with a clanging, gonging headache, completed his journey to Innsbruck. Ficker related all this to me. How I wish I had been passing that morning, the first sleepy traveller along that road when George awoke. In the still crepuscular light, that large lump on the verge begins to stir. Some cracks and declivities suddenly deform the smooth contours. Then a fist punches free, and finally that crude, ugly face emerges with its frosty beret of snow, staring stupidly, blinking, spitting. The war. The war saved my life. I really do not know what I would have done without it. On the 7th of August, the day war was declared on Russia, I enlisted as a volunteer gunner in the artillery for the duration, and was instructed to report to a garrison artillery regiment in Krakow. In my elation I was reluctant to go straight home to pack my bags. My family had by now all returned to Vienna. So I took a taxi to the Café Museum. I should say that I joined the army because it was my civic duty, yet I was even more glad to enlist because I knew at that time I had to do something. I had to subject myself to the rigors of a harsh routine that would divert me from my intellectual work. I had reached an impasse, and the impossibility of ever proceeding further filled me with morbid despair. By the time I reached the Café Museum, it was about 6 o'clock in the evening. I liked this café because its interior was modern. Its square rooms were lined with square, honey-coloured oak panelling, hung with prints of drawings by Charles Dana Gibson. Inside it was busy, the air noisy with speculation about the war. It was warm and muggy, the atmosphere suffused with the reek of beer and cigar smoke. The patrons were mostly young men, students from the nearby art schools, clean-shaven, casually and unaffectedly dressed. So I was a little surprised to catch a glimpse in one corner of a uniform. I pushed through the crowd to see who it was. George, it was obvious, was already fairly drunk. He sat strangely hunched over, staring intently at the tabletop. His posture and the ferocious concentration of his gaze clearly put people off, as the 3 other seats around his table remained unoccupied. I told a waiter to bring a half-litre of Herninger wine to the table, and then sat down opposite him. George was wearing the uniform of an officer, a lieutenant in the medical corps. He looked at me candidly, without resentment, and of course without any sign of recognition. He seemed much the same as the last time I had seen him, at once ill-looking and possessed of a sinewy energy. I introduced myself, and told him I was pleased to see a fellow soldier, as I myself had just enlisted. "It's your civic duty," he said, his voice strong and unslurred. "Have a cigar." He offered me a trabuco, those ones that have a straw mouthpiece because they are so strong. I declined. At that time I did not smoke. When the wine arrived, he insisted on paying for it. "I'm a rich man," he said as he filled our glasses. "Where are you posted?" "Galicia." "Ah, the Russians are coming." He paused. "I want to go somewhere cold and dark. I detest this sun and this city. Why aren't we fighting the Eskimos? I hate daylight. Maybe I could declare war on the Lapps. One-man army. Bit lonely, no? I want to be lonely. All I do is pollute my mind talking to people. I want a dark, cold, lonely war. Please. People will think you're mad." He raised his glass. "God preserve me from sanity." I thought of something Nietzsche had said. Our life, our happiness, is beyond the north, beyond ice, beyond death. I looked into George's ugly face, his thin eyes and glossy lips, and felt a kind of love for him and his honesty. I clinked my glass against his, and asked God to preserve me from sanity as well. Tagebuch, 15th of August, Krakow. If your wife, for example, continually puts too much sugar in your tea, it is not because she has too much sugar in her cupboard. It is because she is not educated in the ways of handling sweetness. Similarly, the problem of how to live a good life cannot ever be solved by continually assaulting it with the intellect. Certain things can only be shown, not stated. The Searchlight. I enlisted in the artillery to fire howitzers, but instead found myself manning a searchlight on a small, heavily armed paddle steamer called the Goplana. We cruised up and down the Vistula, ostensibly looking for Russians, but also to provide support for any river crossings by our own forces. I enjoyed my role in charge of the searchlight. I took its mounting apart and oiled and greased its bearings. Reassembled, it moved effortlessly under the touch of my fingers. Its strong beam shone straight and true in the blurry semi-darkness of those late summer nights. However, I soon found the living conditions on the Goplana intolerable because of the stink, the proximity, and the vulgarity of my fellow soldiers. And because we were constantly in motion, life below decks was dominated by the thrum and grind of the Goplana's churning paddles. I spent long hours in my corner of the bridge house, needlessly overhauling the mechanism of the searchlight, anything to escape the torrent of filth and viciousness that poured from the men. But despite these periods of solitude and isolation, I found that my old despair began to creep through me again, like a stain. One day we disembarked at Sandomierz, and we were sent to a bathhouse. As we washed, I looked at my naked companions, their brown faces and forearms, their grey-white bodies and dark, dripping genitals, as they soaped and sluiced themselves with garrulous ostentation. I felt only loathing for them, my fellow men,